When it comes to horror games, Cronos The New Dawn is by far one of my favorites that's out right now. It reeks of Dead Space while having intriguing story, thrilling gameplay, and gorgeous sci-fi visuals. I mentioned all this in my review, as well as how the game performs on the Steam Deck, which you can also check out in our video performance review. However, there was a new update today that brought with it a native Steam Deck build, which should make the experience on the go even better. So in this video, we're going to go over the changes with that build, see if there has actually been any performance improvement, and what you could expect in general gameplay. If you want to see more videos like this, hit that like and subscribe button, and hit the notification bell to be notified as soon as our next video goes live. If you haven't purchased the game yet, you can save 20% off by buying Cronos The New Dawn on Fanatical for $47.99. So the way we came to know that this update went out was an announcement over on Twitter by the official Cronos The New Dawn account, where they mentioned that they released a native build for the Steam Deck that boosts the game's performance on this platform. So I was immediately curious and I was ready to dive right in. While I was re-downloading the game, I did decide to go onto SteamDB and check the update log to see what exactly has changed. Based on that history, we can see the compatibility changed from Proton 10 to native, which means it now defaults to the Linux version of the game over the Windows. And then going back a few days further, we can see some changes that actually reduce the file size for both the Windows and Linux builds. So when the game launched, it actually had a Linux build already, so it seems that that build has been modified a little bit and become the default for the Steam Deck. Technically not a newly released native build, but it's possible there were some changes that made it better for the Steam Deck. So I went right into testing, and I was ready to see what had changed. I started off by resetting the settings to the game's default, and it took the frame rate to the 10s. It resorted to a custom setup, but without the Steam Deck =0 command launch option, we can't really see what changed. Then I moved the quality preset to low instead of very low, so I could see whether or not we can move up from that very low preset which we recommended before. But it also kept performance low, hovering around 15 to 17 frames per second. So it seems like we haven't had enough optimizations to increase the graphical quality, but I wanted to see if the very low preset would at least perform better than its Windows counterpart. So I tested it, and it seems as though we actually do have some performance improvements. From what I've seen so far in my limited testing, we have about a 10% performance increase over the Windows version now. While this is definitely not enough to heavily change the visuals and make it look better on the deck, it is enough to save a little bit more on battery life and stabilize the tougher to run areas. I never really saw drops below the 27 or 28 frame per second range, so this extra overhead may actually make it possible to stay stable at 38 the entire time. This seems to be consistent throughout the experience from what I've tested so far, but keep in mind there may be some different areas in the future that may still drop a little bit. Overall though, it is an improvement, and 10% is still 10%. For the most stable experience, we're still going to need that 30 frame per second lock and very low settings, so it's good to keep that in mind. Regardless of the changes not being super dramatic, I'm overjoyed to see Bloober Team working on the game to make sure it is as great as it can be on the Steam Deck. This may not be an insane performance increase, but it still does help, and it's a welcome change. The game always had this native Linux version, but I wouldn't be surprised if enough work was put in to make it a better option than using Proton with Windows. Proton usually needs a little bit of power for it to run because it's translating files, so moving over to a native Linux build helps just right there. So if you've been on the fence about getting Cronos New Dawn for your Steam Deck, this should help make that decision a lot easier. Thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like and subscribe button, and hit the notification bell to be notified as soon as our next video goes live. And a huge thank you to our patrons. You guys are awesome. See you next time.